Hello, Richard.
Hi.
Welcome to Norfolk Wine and Spirits.
Thank you.
Great pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time out and coming here and spending some time with us.
Thank you for putting on the nice weather for me as well.
Yeah, that's we can order it anytime.
Yeah.
New England is like that. If
I
you don't like
appreciate
the weather, they say just wait a few hours.
Yeah.
It'll change.
Yeah, so I've been back in Goldenfield now for over 9 years. But I actually started working there as a 13-year-old making boxes in a warehouse. I worked there every summer growing up in our shop or in our bottling or even delivering orders
Okay.
in the UK. And then 9 years ago I came back full time. I've then worked in every part of our business. Spent 3 years after that working in the UK sales team.
Okay.
And the last kind of 4 years now working in the export team, looking after markets in Asia and North America. But just recently started looking after the US market. So it's a very small market to get to know.
Is the US a very small market?
No.
You're trying to make a joke. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I was trying to do something like that yesterday, and I definitely don't want to take up stand-up comic as a second profession. That's not for me. That's for sure. So, how many countries are you in at this point?
We've got whiskies in 54 markets around the world.
Okay. When you say markets, like you count Africa as one market, or you count South Africa? You count?
Yeah, so
different
South Africa
countries
would be
and-
one market.
Okay.
Australia would be one market. New Zealand, China would be one market.
Of course,
So
yeah.
Hong Kong, Taiwan, Japan would all be individual markets.
Okay.
So in Africa at the moment we only really deal with South Africa.
Okay.
That's a very small amount we do there.
Sure.
We're a very small team. There's only 5 of us covering the world.
Okay.
So there's only so many places that we can actually get to.
I had a Gordon MacPhail band
Yeah.
in Cape Town
Okay.
last year.
Yeah.
That was fantastic.
Yeah.
So, and that's the fun thing with Gordon MacPhail. You have so many closed distilleries that you release off and on. We had tasted Port Out
Yeah.
late last year, and that was fantastic. So, how do you, at this time, the single malts are really exploding, like Macallan's, Glenlivet, Balvenie. They're very hard to get.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you have so many other unknown distilleries, if you will, Glenallachie, or Ardmore is not unknown anymore.
Alta Bain, you've got Balmenix, you've got so many more.
Right.
These are distilleries where, for us, we can still fill whiskey at every year. Some of the big distilleries that we fill at, or we have filled at, we can't fill whiskey there anymore, just because they don't have the capacity or they're looking to protect themselves and not have too many expressions in the market. So we always work with as many distilleries as we can, but we do see a trend to move towards more the less well-known distilleries. I think that's really where independent bottlers are still able to get whiskey and actually bottle it. But the key thing for us is always about filling our own casks at distilleries. We're not buying mature whiskey, not because mature whiskey is better or worse than what we do. We're just looking to guarantee the consistency and the availability of our products over a 50-year cycle.
Right.
We're always investing for the future. That's the great thing about being a family-owned business. We're not looking to satisfy shareholders to make us maximize returns on a quarterly or an annual basis. We're looking to always make sure we reinvest into the business to make sure it keeps getting stronger and stronger over a generation.
Right. So we talked offline earlier that you also are involved with Paul John in the distribution side, English Whiskey Company, and some other whiskies which are not from Scotland.
Yeah.
Do you ever think about aging those sort of whiskies in Scotland? Are there regulatory issues there, or would you release let's say English Whiskey Company under Gordon MacPhail label?
We are a Scotch whisky company, so everything that we do now is based on Scotch whisky.
Okay.
That's where we have our expertise, and that's really what the Goldenfield name is: single malt Scotch whisky. As a business, our business has evolved drastically over the last 122 years. We still have our shop where we founded, where we were founded in 1895. We were a grocery wholesaler up to the early 90s. We started to distribute wines and spirits really in the 70s, and that became a way of us getting our whiskies to retailers, to restaurants, to bars throughout the UK. And as part of that business process, we took on other brands which complemented what we were doing and allowed us to get more of a full service to those customers in the UK. So that's where that side developed from. But at the moment, everything we do on the whiskey side is always based on Scotch whisky.
So is all the whiskey aged in the same area as far as your warehouses, or are they distributed across Scotland?
So we'll keep half our stock pretty much in Elgin and the other half throughout Scotland at distilleries. We feel it's very important that whiskey should mature on site at distilleries wherever possible. So if that's the case, we'll rent space per cask in warehouses throughout Scotland.
Okay.
So for example, when we fill whiskey at Kalila, we will try and make sure we mature that on Isla, just so we get the same kind of environment a Kalila cask should get when it's maturing. So we'll bring casks back to Elgin a year, typically before we're due to bottle it. We'll then check the casks to make sure it's what we expect, and then it will either be bottled to plan or it will be held back and kept for an older whiskey. So a lot of the old whiskies that we have are all in our warehouse in Elgin,
Okay.
and the younger whiskies would be out on site throughout Scotland.
I see. So, how many total barrels do you think might be at Glenfiddich at this point, or any one point?
So in terms of capacity, our warehouse in Elgin can stock 8,000 casks at any one time.
8,000. Okay.
And that would be our capacity on site. And then our distillery as well, we have 5 warehouses there now, and we can store 12,000 casks there as well.
Okay.
So it's overall business, we're increasing our stocks, and it's all about that kind of long term.
Right. So, plus the whiskies that's aging at distilleries themselves. Okay.
But the number varies up and down depending on what we're pulling in,
Sure.
depending on what we fill.
Right.
But it's very important that we keep that process up to make sure we don't just empty our warehouse
Right,
and have nothing left.
Right. So, how many distilleries do you have of those 25 or 24,000 odd casks? How many distilleries?
So for Glenfiddich, we currently have over 100, so 103 different distillery makes in our portfolio. I'd estimate 30 to 33% would be from closed distilleries. So these are stocks that we can never replace. These are your Port Allens, your Rosebanks, your Gwinnetts, Colburns, Capadonics, and there's so many there I can't remember them all off the top of my head.
Of course.
And then there'll be ones that we are no longer able to fill at just because that's the decision of that distillery.
Right.
But one thing for us is, even if a distillery says we can't fill whiskey there this year, we still very much work in that relationship. You just don't know what will happen next year or the year after.
Right.
So we'll always just keep working hard to make sure we can fill as much as we can.
The relationships, okay.
Yeah. One of the great things we have is with distilleries like Glen Grant, where we offer variety to their core range, and they actually can buy our whiskey at the distillery. So they're not actually, we fill casks, we mature it, we bottle it under a distillery label that we've used for many, many years.
Sure. Yeah.
And then we do exclusive expressions for them to sell at the distillery as well, which they don't have in their portfolio.
Wow, that's
So-
very interesting. So it's basically reselling it back to them.
Yeah, so it shows how we never try and compete with a brand owner. That's not what Glenfield's about. It's about complementing and offering variety to a distillery make. Hopefully over the last 122 years, we've developed a reputation for quality that distillery owners are not afraid of what we do, so they actually allow us to keep filling whiskey and still laying down stock for to bottle in many, many years' time.
So what does the future look like for Scotch whiskey? I mean, not only for independent bottlers, but also for Scotch in general. In your
What-
opinion? Especially because there's a lot of competition coming from Japan, Taiwan, Indian whiskies, Australians are doing quite well.
Yeah.
And also craft whiskey boom in the US is really burgeoning. Canadian whiskey is on the map,
Yeah.
very strongly. And how do you see Irish whiskey? I mean, they're creating distilleries like, left and right.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be more competition. Everyone's doing a really good job of producing quality spirits and products. All we can really do is focus on what we do and do it to the best of our ability. So Glenfiddich, we've kind of discussed about laying down our own cask, maturing whiskey, there's matching spirit and cask characteristics to produce great whiskies. Benwomac our distillery is very much to produce small batch, handcrafted whiskey in an old-fashioned way. That's really what Benwomac's about. It's a traditional distillery making old-fashioned whiskey. We're not trying to match up against anything else, we're just trying to stick to what we feel is what that competition is. So yeah, there'll be more competition, but all we can do is just try and keep doing what we do and make sure that our space is still there in the market. I do see trends in most of the countries I go to that craft and the story behind the brand is becoming more and more important. People really want to see what the brand is about and where it comes from. For Glenfiddich and for Benwomac, we've got this great 122-year history, one of the few independent, family-owned whiskey companies left in Scotland, with a continuous ownership for over 100 years.
Right.
That
Same
gives
family.
us, same family. Yeah, so my great-grandfather joined Glenfiddich as a 14-year-old apprentice in 1895 in the first year of trading, and then by 1915 he was the sole senior partner, and then sole owner of the business from then. So it's been in my family's ownership now, 100% for over 100, almost 102 years now. So that's quite a long time, and yeah.
So, and also, I think the team here in Massachusetts, at least, we have Gary Kymack and Chris, Joe Swanson. I mean, it's a very, very solid team, and that really helps doing consistent things in store, because people really don't, even though we do a lot of independent bottlers, they don't understand the concept, and every independent bottler does things slightly differently. Especially you have your own distillery, plus the Bendermac, and plus the bottles, which you actually everything is filled by yourself, essentially.
Yeah, that's the key thing about Bowman Phil is it's by maturing our own whiskey from new make, we're not saying it's better than by mature whiskey. It's just guaranteeing the consistency of the whiskies that we have. So if we do a 15-year-old age statement and we've lost that filling contract, we can still do a 15-year-old from that distillery for 15 years. So every cask we fill has a destiny.
Right.
So we know when we fill casks out Mortlake, I use that as an example because it's just down here.
Right.
We will always, every year we fill that, there'll be so many casks put down to be a 15-year-old whiskey. There'll be so many to be a 25-year-old. There'll be so many to be vintage bottlings. So that gives us this kind of cushion that as the market changes, we don't have to react necessarily as quickly because we have a plan that we stick to every year. So we're filling down stock to be 75-year-old whiskey, because that's the oldest whiskey we've done so far.
75-year-old. Yeah.
So that's the 1939 Mortwick Generations bottling, aged 75 years in the first low sherry barrel. So that cask actually got laid down by my great-grandfather. My grandfather was in the business as well. He joined in 1933. It then was matured in one cask that entire time and bottled after the entire third generation had done their entire working career.
Wow.
And then I stood up in China, I stood in Vegas last year, saying, wow, this is